A standard cost is most often used in a manufacturing environment. The cost lists the component, machine, labor, and overhead costs, and also presents a graph representing these costs so that you can understand how much a role they play in each one of those categories. The standard cost is used to value the stock. If you have 10 units in stock and each standard cost or the standard cost for the product is set at $1 per unit, then the total value of your stock would be $10. A standard cost is also used to value movement transactions throughout the facility for components, semi-finished products, and products. So if an inventory transaction increasing or decreasing the inventory is made, the standard cost will be used to value that transaction. It also values movements of finished products, products that have been recently produced and created during a work order process. And finally, standard costs are used to complete or compute the bill of materials. Starting at the bottom level and working your way up to the top, you can add up or accumulate the standard cost for each material and its quantity to be used in a finished product. Standard costs come in a variety of types, and each type has a different use. The primary standard cost is used to calculate the actual costs and values for the products at a particular site. The revised standard cost can be used to calculate a revised cost if changes are made during the fiscal year to the standard cost. The budgeted cost can be used to calculate a budget, or it can be used to set up costs for the next fiscal year. And finally, the simulated cost is used to run simulations to assist planners in researching and determining what costs would be under certain circumstances. So a planner might use a simulated cost to increase the cost of one item or decrease the cost of an operation to determine what effect that might have on the standard cost. Changes made in the simulated cost area do not directly affect standard costs. All of the standard cost types are site-driven. This means that the cost at one site is not necessarily the same as the cost at any other site that may be set up in the software. Product selection for standard cost can be unique, all, or by formula. This means that you can run a standard cost calculation for a particular product, all products, or a selection of products based on a formula. You can also select standard costs by fiscal year and start and end dates. And standard costs can be used to update bills of material, fixed costs, material, and overhead costs. When standard costs are updated, the user has three choices. The first is no. Do not update standard costs. Simply create a report that can be reviewed to determine what the update would have been. The next is deferred. The report is created and the standard costs are stored in a temporary area until the user decides to run a new process which will take the deferred costs and place them into the standard cost record. And finally, immediate update will take the costs that are processed during a cost calculation and move them immediately to the standard cost record. Various accounting methods are used to work with standard costs. Primarily, standard costs are used to track the differences between standard costs and actual costs. Variances are calculated and stored in a special account which are applied to the cost of goods sold at a later date. Standard costs are used to value products, whether they are purchased or produced within your facility. Standard costs are defined as the cost used to value the inventory at a particular site. They can be defaulted as the purchase price for purchase orders if the user selects the appropriate setup parameters. It's important to understand how standard costs are used when creating work orders and during the manufacturing process. Standard costs are basically theoretical costs. The standard cost, the revised standard, the budgeted cost, and the simulated cost are all theoretical. They are all records entered and calculated by the user before manufacturing or production begins. These costs represent, in theory, what the cost of manufacturing a particular product would be if that manufacturing took place in a perfect environment. Production costs are somewhat different. Production costs begin with the planned release cost for a particular work order to build a given finished good. These planned release costs come from the standard cost. During production, these costs become provisional. From time to time, various products, materials cost more than you expect, or you might have a machine that runs overtime by several hours or even days, and these things affect the cost that was established before the work order began. At the conclusion of the work order, the actual production cost can be determined by trackings and then compared to the standard costs. Now let's take a look at how the standard costs can be set up in the software. To find standard costs, start in the Common Data module and scroll down to Products, find Product Costs, and click on the Standard Cost function. You can close the right panel to provide more room on the screen. All standard costs can be looked up in the left list by entering the product or the storage site. By expanding the left list, you can also see the fiscal year, the start and end dates for the cost number, and total and overhead information. It's important to note that more than one standard cost can be calculated for a single year. So you always want to make sure you're looking at the highest number for the particular year that you're interested in. The standard cost screen consists of a header and several tabs. The header displays the product, storage site, version, fiscal year, and cost group information. The first tab shows the level cost of the component, material, machine, labor, subcontracting, and also the calculation quantity, which is used to distribute fixed costs. The second tab is very similar to the level cost or first tab. It shows multi-level totals. If a product has many layers, machine and labor cost may be hidden inside of lower layers. So the multi-level totals tab breaks out all the costs from all the layers and consolidates them under material, machine, labor, subcontracting, and so on. The last tab shows the calculation parameters. These were the parameters in place when the standard cost was calculated using the standard cost calculation function.